All right. Welcome to another episode in the Run Breiter Podcast. This is episode number 14. And I am super excited to say we have on an amazing guest today. We have on Matt Choi. And Matt, I have been following you for a long time, really, just seeing all the different posts you have, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. So, this is really an amazing opportunity to be able to speak to you. I know a lot about your background, but I want to give you the opportunity to do most of the talking here today. So I'll hand it off to you. I think a good way to kick things off here we'd love to hear about your background, who you are. I'm sure some of the listeners know a little bit about you, but go ahead and give a general background. That'd be great.
Yeah, hell yeah, Sam, super fun to be here. I always love these opportunities just to kind of connect and chat with other runners in the space. But a little background about myself. My name is Matt Choi. I was born in New Jersey, kind of raised by a single mom. I had an older brother, moved around a good amount when I was a kid, lived in New Jersey for the first 7 to 8 years of my life, then moved to Las Vegas, then eventually moved to Maryland, where I went to middle school, ended up playing high school football through high school, and also played in college, earning a scholarship at Monmouth University, which is a small school in New Jersey, actually. So it's funny kind of going back home in that sense, to New Jersey. But I graduated with a business marketing and management degree in 2017. And at that moment, I was kind of like that football player, that former athlete that didn't really know what was the next chapter in my life in that sense. And, I went into corporate America first and worked in a sales and management position for about a year and a half. And I just wasn't really loving what I was doing. I didn't really have a passion for it. And something my uncle told me was, Matt, wherever you are in the business world or in life, look, there should be someone that's 5 or 10 years older than you that kind of is living the lifestyle or has some things that you want. And that should be someone that you look up to. And if there's not that individual in the organization that you're working at, then you should highly consider, changing organizations or changing cultures in that sense. And I kind of made that pivot. I moved back home. So I was living in Baltimore at the time, and I moved back to my mom's place in Montgomery County, Maryland. And I kind of just reinvented myself in a sense. I started my own personal brand. At first, it was a lot around fitness training. I was a personal trainer at that time, and I focused a lot on athletes, specifically football players, because that's kind of my background and who I knew and who I wanted to serve at that time. And, dude, as all that stuff went along, obviously COVID hit. In-person sessions, in-person training wasn't as readily available. And that's kind of where a lot of my running journey started, was during COVID and not having access to a gym and only having, a pull-up bar at home and, the ground to do push-ups and then the ground to also run. And that's kind of where I found my love and passion for running now. And obviously it's crazy that this is all spiraled in the past 2 years. Because previously, Sam, I am not a big fan of running, especially endurance running. So this has been a big pivot. But now kind of giving you guys a little context about today, I'm basically a full-time content creator. I see myself as a media company. And obviously the platforms, social media-wise, are kind of the news outlets. And that's how I am able to generate most of my income. And I do a little bit of consulting work as well. But it's awesome just being able to see myself turning my brand almost into a business. And I love having these conversations with other people to then help them understand that they can do the same exact thing. And even though it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of sweat and it takes a lot of time, but in the end of it, man, it's so fun waking up every single day and doing what you love to do. And, being able to work for yourself, man. I mean, Sam, these are things that I've always envisioned and dreamed of. And now to kind of have that and, living it into fruition almost, it's been just an amazing journey, man.
Yeah, man. And I've heard this story before, but every time I hear it, I mean, it's so inspiring just to hear that you really went out after something that you're passionate about and that you enjoy, and to be able to be an individual that's literally just went from playing football in college to then creating content during COVID to now really owning your own company that is just your own personal brand. I mean, it's such an amazing story, and something that for me is a big goal of mine down the line as well. But I would love to take a couple steps back and talk about, football and then that adjusting to running, because from what I've seen, and you mentioned this here on the podcast, you were never really into running. So obviously with at the beginning. And with football, obviously there's a little bit of running with it, but I guess if you don't mind telling a little bit more about your story playing football, and then really what your issues with running at the beginning were.
For sure. So kind of giving you guys context, obviously I got raised by a single mom. So I have an older brother, and who's actually, it's funny, he's in Austin right now too. But it's just, it was one of those things where my mom put us in sports, and sports was kind of our outlet to just be a kid. Right. And I think in those moments when, all the other kids are kind of just playing around, like it's an equal playing ground, no matter if you came from a parent household that has both parents, no parents, one parent, whatever it might be. Obviously, my mom also wanted us to find male role models and coaches and people that were, just kind of could be that guidance, right? Because obviously she didn't really know how to manage that stuff. So for me, sports, specifically football, has kind of been my whole childhood, my whole life in a sense. I've gotten lost into my identity as a quote unquote football player for a lot of my life. And throughout high school, I started to see some success, and then like the whispers of some college scholarships were kind of roaming around the end of my junior year. And even my mom, like, she didn't really think that it could happen. Like, she didn't really believe it. And like for me, dude, Sam, like college for me was one of those options where I was either going to be going to community college or trying to earn a scholarship.
Wow.
And those were kind of my two routes. And obviously, being my mom, both my parents couldn't really afford for both me and my brother to go to, public schools and, paying $50K a year. How many kids are going to student loan debt now? It's absurd. So even for me at that age, I just knew that like I wanted to, I loved football. I wanted to further playing in college. That was a goal of mine. Secondly, I knew that was going to be the vehicle to then allow me to go experience college and go experience what it's like to go away from your hometown and experience meeting the freshmen, like just living in the dorms, that whole thing. And football was obviously the vehicle. And you're right, football, you don't really do endurance running. You don't run miles. You run 100-meter sprints. Like you do a lot more acceleration and agility stuff. So it's a completely different mode of fitness. But I've obviously created a structure around myself as an athlete, right? And I think that's something where I'm a firm believer, Sam, that if you're an athlete, it's a little bit easier to become a runner because you've built up some form of a base of athleticism, whether it's strength or some form of like speed and agility. Mm-hmm. But it's much harder when you're a runner to almost turn yourself into that bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Because you've already developed such a slow twitch muscle fiber that then now going into such a diet, like such an opposite form of training is very difficult. But dude, for me, like I was used to doing some form of conditioning and cardiovascular conditioning, but it was never in that form of like super slow base building. And that transition, Sam, for me was very tough. Like I didn't know one proper running form. Like I would find myself trying to use sprinting mechanics when I run, and it just doesn't work. There's a reason that 100-meter runners run a little bit differently than someone that runs a mile, right? And like the form and the mechanics are slightly different. There's obviously nuances that are very similar, but like as I started to run a lot more, I started to get a lot of injuries. And like that stuff sucked when you're a new runner because you're like, damn, I'm really motivated. I have this discipline to try this new hobby, but then your body starts to break down. And I think those were the early struggles I had with running, was just like my body adjusting, because mentally I was there. I was all in, but my body had to kind of slowly adapt to what I was like the stimulus I was giving it in that sense.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying there. I think that's a great point. First, the fact how you brought up, it's harder to go from being a runner than transitioning into something like strength training or competitive sports, for example, compared to already playing competitive sports or doing strength training and then going into running because of that athletic build. I think that's a big reason why as people get older and it's more time consuming or strenuous on the body to do some of those other activities, people kind of jump into running as they get to an older age. But I mean, I guess for you, obviously you had some issues with your form. You saw some injuries happen. Now you're teaching people how to run. Now you're really an example setter. How did you go about actually learning how to become a better runner and learning all these different techniques?
I did. That's a great question. I think, this is just like, it's learning, obviously. Now, how someone learns is going to be different. For me, it was a lot of consumption of podcasts, of books, of watching other pro runners and other content creators that were in the space, almost kind of like seeing how they were coaching either themselves or clients. So I think for me, it was just a lot of information. And I think anytime you're picking up a new hobby, Malcolm Gladwell from Outliers talks about 10,000 hours. And like those 10,000 hours are not always a physical contribution of time. It's sometimes it is mental. It is, film watching. And that's why even in sports, people watch film, then they study the playbook, and then they actually have to go execute. But the execution is only a little bit of the time invested of, the dedication of the sport or the craft. So for me, the guys I've really kind of like looked into that kind of had a lot of knowledge in that sense, the book called The Science of Running by Steve Magnus. I had a physical therapy friend that recommended that book, and he said, Matt, read this cover to cover, and it'll fill in a lot of the details that you're missing, that you're not fully comprehending. It'll kind of help you with that, just like giving you a baseline textbook. And it's no different than learning communications 101. Like you get a textbook and you got to read it. So I think for most people watching this or listening to this, understand that you are more than capable of learning whatever you want to, because there's so much knowledge and information now. The device, the internet, the thing that we're communicating on right now will provide you everything that you need, and it will cost you significantly less than a college degree. So whether it's a hobby that you want to turn into a business or a hobby that you just want to find, I always say, Google is your mother. YouTube is your freaking university. So utilize these platforms because they have all the knowledge on there. And some other guys I watched were like Nick Bear, who's like obviously another creator that wasn't always a runner, but he surrounded himself around a lot of good coaches and people that were kind of teaching and coaching him on how to run properly. And those two things, like a lot of creators, and then reading for myself, and then different podcasts, man. Like I love hearing the stories of other runners, because it's one of those things, Sam, that like, to your point, there's obviously drills and techniques that everyone can learn to develop a better running form or mechanics. But running is also one of those things that it's just human nature for us to do it.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason that babies just crawl and then they start to walk and then they start to, move a little bit quicker. Like it's natural as humans to run. So most people that are watching this, listening to this right now, you can go step outside and run right now. You might not run a full marathon, but you can do it for 5 minutes without a problem, without someone teaching you how to do it. So another part of this learning is by doing.
Yeah.
You have to fail, you have to mess up on a long run or your first run to learn that, hey, there might be a better way to do this. My shoes might not be good enough. They might be worn down. Am I landing on the right proper side of my foot? Because now I have this knee pain that's excruciating. So I'm not able to run anymore. So I think there's a mixture of obviously the form of proper education, whether it's through podcasts, books, people, whatever, but then the actual teacher is you doing it and stepping outside, putting on your shoes. Because I think, Sam, nowadays through social media, man, everyone wants these secrets, like 3 steps to running, improving your running form. Will those videos help you? Of course, I produce some of those videos that people see, but that's not the only thing. The main thing is you having the actual will and the discipline to start. And that will answer most people's questions of like, oh my God, how do I begin?
Yeah. No, that's everything you said there. I couldn't agree with more. It's funny, the way that you learned running was kind of in an opposite order of how I did. So I've been running competitively since I was 12 years old. I didn't run in college, but I actually coached a middle school and a high school track team for 3 years over that time. So I was able to really like make an impact there. But I knew from doing, but now I feel like over the last couple years, after college, to continue learning about running and continue sharing value, I'm learning most of it from watching content, from reading books, listening to podcasts. So it's funny how we both learn the same way, just in a different order. But obviously, both of us are sharing different value with different communities on running, which is awesome. But I would love to, I'd love to hear you share some different stories, about some of the different accomplishments that you've had with running. I mean, I've seen a lot of different races that you've done. I know that you recently just qualified for the Boston Marathon. That's actually a goal of mine myself that I'm working towards. I have my marathon next Wednesday where we're going to attempt it. So it's kind of
that's a lot.
Yeah, but if you don't mind, like, I think the listeners would love to hear some of the races and accomplishments that you've done over the last couple of years since you started getting into running.
For sure, man. Well, first, best of luck to you, dude. I know you're gonna crush it. We'll be running together in 2023 in April.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it. I guess I mean I'll kind of start with like, the first marathon I ever did was on my 26th birthday, and that was in April of 2021. So that was last year, and that was just kind of like Sam. I didn't really know what I was doing. I understood that I need to take in some form of nutrition, and this was a non-sponsored event. It was just kind of like I found a local area in Maryland. It had snowed a couple days before, so the track that I was going to do this on was eliminated. I found this like 1 or maybe like a 2 mile loop around this sportsplex that I just looped around. I used my car as like an aid station, and that was the first marathon I did. I finished in 3 hours and 55 minutes. Less about the time, more about the accomplishment of doing it. I think there's something special about anyone's first quote unquote race or first challenge that they embark on, especially a long run like that. It's something that's special, and it's like something I'll always remember, man. I mean, a lot of times it's easy to just look at your time, and the time is a meter of success, especially in a sport like this where we are gauged on how quickly someone can execute a distance, right? But I think there's obviously a lot of lessons that can be learned even through those 26 miles. Like there's so many lessons that you can take from it that are more important than that mile itself. And whether it is the commitment to a goal, right? Or it's commitment to not stopping when you're tired and stopping when you're actually done. I think I had that quote in my head this past weekend, saying that a lot to myself, especially after that mile 21 mark, where the body at that point is in full exertion. Like you are getting to that point of tapping out to your limit of what you have as fuel. But there's something special about that conversation that you have internally and the ability to push past that discomfort, right? Because it's momentary discomfort for the joy and the pride that you get for accomplishing something like that. So I mean, I hit that first marathon in February, and then immediately I did this Goggins challenge, which I don't know if your listeners know, but it's the 4x4x48, which is a way more mentally exhausting challenge. It's 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So basically at the end of 2 days, you run 48 miles in 48 hours, and that's the challenge. And obviously, the challenge is you get very little sleep, very little recovery, and you need to be able to, one, execute the 4 miles as quickly as possible so you can get into recovery mode. But honestly, dude, it's very tedious. It eliminates your entire weekend. You're operating off very little sleep, and it's pretty much the exact opposite of a healthy routine. Sleeping enough, eating enough, getting enough recovery. You're pretty much challenging yourself not to do any of those things. And mentally, it can be it can break you down, like just flat out. Like, I mean, it's never fun waking up at 3:50 in the freaking cold of the Northeast to go run 4 miles. Like there's, no matter how you twist it and reframe it, there's nothing enjoyable about it, but to actually do it and accomplish it, it's not about the time once again, but the will and the discipline to just complete the mission. I think it's taught me a lot of like life skills. Again, the things I got from football that I'm now putting into practice for myself, but it's different now, Sam, because back then I had coaches and teammates relying on me to do my job, to do my part. But when you're in this space, when you're doing this against yourself to test your own mental will, there's no one else to point the finger and blame. You have to take that ownership of if you execute this thing or not, right? And I think I love that aspect about these challenges now, Sam. And something I really love about running is that it's against you. It's so easy to compare yourself to another runner that maybe you're running with or running against, or even on those social media. But when through the thick and thick of it, you against you on that race day. And that's all that matters, because when you're feeling like shit, only you will tell you to stop or tell you to keep going. Your friend could tell you, they can give you the best motivational speech, but you internally need to make that decision. I think that I have found I've really enjoyed about running, man. It's special in that sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the fact that you bring up it's you against yourself is really one of the reasons that it's the most challenging. Well, it's one of the more challenging things to do, but the reason why I love it, because you have so much control with it. The outcome, you define it. And I mean, I think at this age, when you get a little older, you're past your high school, college days, you get to the point in life where like controlling the outcome of everything you do is a great way to live and a great way to find a lot of fulfillment. So I couldn't agree more. But yeah, I mean, also I noticed outside of the Goggins challenge that you did, I saw that you've also done what 50-mile, you've done a 50-mile ultra marathon and a 100-mile one as well. How are those experiences?
Unforgettable. Amazing experiences. And the 50 miler was, I think, a month after that Goggins challenge. So the Goggins challenge was like a base builder for me to then have like a little bit more confidence to attempt this 50 miler. And I'll say this about even just this running stuff, man. Like, it's important to have a community or other groups of people that kind of can have these conversations with you, because I never would have signed up for that 50 miler if one of my buddies, Jason Hine, who is a savage ultra runner, he was doing the 100-mile race that day. And he told me, he's like, dude, there's a 50-mile option. You should try your first ultra. And Sam, for me, like, I didn't know if I was ready. I didn't know if I did enough quote unquote work to do it. And I tell people all the time, it's like, don't ever say no to things because you don't think you're quote unquote ready. Most people in life we're not ready for most of our days, but we find a way to get through it. And I say the same thing about running. Before I ran 50 miles, I never ran 50 miles in one sitting. I've done a marathon. I did the Goggins challenge, but there was a level of doubt even that I had of like, damn, what if? Like, I don't know if I can do it, but I knew that I wasn't going to quit and I was going to give my best effort. And I think for people that are listening to this, like, if you could actually apply that messaging into your mind with everything that you do in life, one, you will not only be more curious and be open-minded to new things, but even when you fail at those things, you will have that framework of, at least I tried, I gave my best effort, and now let me regroup and find out how I can then accomplish this goal. And I think it's a great place for people to go, because most people don't fail in life because most people don't try new things because they're afraid to fail.
Yeah.
So I never would have thought of running 50 miles if I never wanted to try new things, and I would have just said, no, I'm a former football guy. I'm just going to go lift weights. But the curiosity of like, damn, what if I could do that? What if I could turn myself from a football player into an endurance athlete? And I just had that curiosity that was fueling me. And that race was an eye opener because I accomplished it. I did it in about, I think, 9 hours or something. It wasn't the fastest, but that's not the point, right? It's like, the point is achieving something that is way out of your comfort, because then it starts to open up your own mindset about, damn, what other things can I do? Because Sam, in that moment, I'm like, damn, I did 50 miles. You know, what parts of my business am I not fully extracting? What part of my relationships, what part of my family life, personal life, all of those things, like, where am I not giving my all? Because if I said that 50 miles was never doable, but then I do it, then I'm like, where else am I leaving stuff on the table? And the 100-miler was kind of similar, man. Like, I never ran 100 miles before attempting that. And of course, there's a level of doubt that we all have as humans. Like, the reason that we're humans is because we're flawed. Like, we're not machines. We don't just show up and like can just crush everything that we do. Like, some people are very talented and good at certain things, but it's hard for most humans to just come to a 100-mile race and just do it, right? But obviously you have to build up some base to kind of getting you to that point of even having a little bit of confidence. I believe that routine and habits can start to develop more confidence for people. And if you have never done a 10K, then don't go sign up for 100 miles, obviously. But you can sign up for a 10K and start your journey of completing that challenge. So I think for me, Sam, like, both moments were beyond memorable, and something that I want to continue to push myself and try new things, new races in that sense, because I truly believe that it's unlocked something mentally for me to really realize that as humans, man, we are as limitless as we want to be and as much as we choose to be. But I think a lot of times we put ourselves into our own box or society's box or our parents' box or whatever box that we might put ourselves in, and we don't get ourselves out of it. And sometimes the key is just our internal brain and our internal voice that we have in our own mind. And once you unlock that, man, like, dude, Sam, you've been running for a lot longer than I have. And I'm a firm believer that almost anyone can achieve these great things because so many ordinary people have already done it. Like, it's not impossible if someone has already accomplished it. So for me, it's like, when I see that blueprint out there, I just want to make sure that I'm doing everything in my hands to either mirror that blueprint or use that blueprint and put my own twist to it and make it my own. And I'm hoping that hopefully I can continue to just spread that message.
Yeah. Love this, man. You're a great speaker, and a lot of your, philosophies and views on the world and on life and fitness. It's just very motivational. And I think the people who are listening here are going to really appreciate a lot of what you're saying. So a lot of this means a lot, man. But I know you're talking a lot about, always pushing the limits and trying to accomplish more, whether it's with, your running, fitness in general. I'm sure too, that has a relation, but also with your business. I guess we can start on the fitness side of things. I mean, are there any future goals, some things that you have in your head that you're looking at doing, or is that kind of to be determined there?
Like you mean something specific, Sam? Like
are there any future races, or accomplishments with running or just fitness in general that you hope to do, or are you just kind of feeling it out right now?
I mean, dude,
I know you're doing a lot.
I have a laundry list. Obviously, this past weekend, hitting the sub-3 marathon, running in Boston is a goal of mine. And not necessarily that I don't have a time per se for that yet, Sam, but running in Boston is something I really want to do. I want to run all the major marathons. I want to I'm trying to fundraise for New York City this year. And I know it's right around the corner. It's in a couple months here, but that's something that I really want to definitely just check that off the list in that sense. There's a couple of races, I want to do Tokyo. I want to do an international running tour and kind of bring running kind of outside of the domestic world, at least for my audience.
Yeah.
And there's still some ultras that I want to really beat. I want to tackle, I want to do Leadville at some point. And obviously some of these races are, they're raffle bids. So there's not a guarantee to get into them. So it's funny that you even asked this, Sam, because, one of my buddies who's actually training for Leadville, or he's getting ready to run it in about a couple of days here. He asked me when we were running one day in Austin, he said, what are you going to do to celebrate, the sub 3 hours? And I thought about it for a second, Sam, and I told him, I said, honestly, I don't have anything planned. Because for me, it's less about previous accomplishments, previous races and things of that sort. I'm very big about, being grounded in the present and working for the future and working for future races in this example, in that sense. And I don't celebrate extraordinary of these races, because I feel like every day I'm celebrating just being able to live out a passion, a dream of mine, right? And it's less about the dream of running, because I never had that dream. I've almost formulated that into what I do now, but I think just the dream of owning what I do in every sense that in every meaning of that, in the sense of my business, in the sense of my fitness, in the sense of my health. I want to own that stuff. I don't feel like anyone's forcing me to do these things. I just choose it, dude, Sam, who wants to go run 100 miles? Not many people want to do that shit,
Yeah.
And I signed up for that race. I paid money to suffer for 29 hours. No, I paid money on Sunday to go suffer for 26 miles. And I think for me, the love and the passion's actually just in the journey. It's the training. I enjoy the training aspect, Sam. I knew that I was somewhat ready for Sunday, because the runs I had in Austin were harder than the run I had on Sunday, honestly. Yeah. And I'm talking about 17-mile workouts, 19-mile workouts, 16-mile workouts, because the heat here is no joke. So to answer your question, I mean, there's a couple of races, yes, that I do want to do, in the next year and a half. But I love just the pursuit. I don't think this is going to stop for me. Some people ask me dude, are you going to do a Ironman? And I don't like to say no to things, or can't, just because it's just not part of my dialogue or how I perceive anything in my mind. So I'm open to almost anything, Sam. And there's not many races or challenges that I'm going to say no to. Will it not be in my direct trajectory? Yes. That's something that maybe an Ironman is something I do in my 30s. I don't see it in the next year and a half, but it's something that I am open to. And maybe this running stuff gets old for me, and I go completely into swimming or freaking CrossFit. I don't know. But I just know that I'm the type of individual that brings the same energy and passion in what I do. So whatever it might be, I'm going to just try to provide as much juice as I can in that sense.
Yeah. And I think what you say when you're talking about just providing as much energy as you can into whatever you're passionate about based on your stage in life. I mean, I think that's why you make such great content, because you truly are passionate about what you're doing. And you're clearly not someone that's just doing something to check off the box just to get views and likes and followers. It's because it's something that you truly enjoy and you enjoy the process. And I'm excited to continue seeing what you decide to do for yourself and for your brand, because I've enjoyed everything so far. I did want to also bring up, I know you are trying to get into New York City. I will be doing that in November. I actually live in New York City right now. So
Nice.
get in, let me know. I'll also, and I want to talk about this too. I'm doing the Austin Marathon in February.
Let's
So
go.
excited to do that. I just signed up a couple weeks ago. Just because I love Austin. I've visited last year for the first time. I've only been there once, but I went for like a week with some friends just to have a good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I know you're originally from Jersey. You were living in Maryland for a while after you graduated, right?
Yes.
And then you moved to Austin kind of like without knowing anyone really, right?
I knew one person, one college teammate that I played football with for 2 years. And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what made you want to move to Austin specifically? I know, like I said, I've been there. It's an awesome city. The people there are really great. But what led you to make this, quite the lifestyle change, and only knowing one person is not an easy mission for many.
It really isn't. And it's funny, Sam, this is a question I've been getting a lot, and more recent, not even more recent, but like, when I first moved here, people were all wondering like, why Austin? And I guess I could kind of give you a quick story. I guess I'm just a big believer in being a practitioner. If I read something out of a book, if I watch a video, like, it's less about getting that knowledge. I want to then attempt it. I want to try it. Like, when I heard about someone doing a 100-mile race, Sam, I was like, dude, I didn't even know people did. Like, I didn't know ultra marathons were a thing until I really heard David Goggins' story. And so many people nowadays will read something and that becomes their ideology. They'll start to like really consume that and be like, this is what I'm about. I read this in a book and I'm just going to start to preach this, right? I'm a firm believer in being a practitioner. Like, if I read something, if I learn about something, I want to go test it. I want to test out the shoes that someone says is the most comfortable pair of running shoes. Or if someone says, 50-mile race or 100-mile race, whatever it is. You know how many people, Sam, say that Austin's a great place to live?
A lot.
Austin's the hottest city to live in, best looking people, young people, X, Y, and Z, mainstream media, social media, friends, whatever. People and their mother will tell you that Austin's the spot to be at, right? And no different than people talking about a 100-mile race or an endurance race. I just wanted to get my own opinion on it. And I never visited Austin. Clearly, I had an awareness and an understanding that this market is booming, that there are a young amount of people that are young, that are flocking to this city, that health and wellness was on the forefront. Like, I knew these things from a wide screen, in that sense, from a bird's eye view, but I never visited. Like, I didn't know where to start in terms of like, where do I live? Like, what areas should I move into? And my buddy Rome that lives out here, he was my one source of kind of like someone that I could trust in terms of his knowledge of the city and his interest as well. And just kind of giving me a general layout of like, all right, this is what the city is about. In these certain pockets, you're going to get more outdoorsy stuff, more access to the bars, more access to downtown, more suburbia if you go further away, north or south of the city. So I got a bunch of intel in that sense. But for me to actually make that jump, there was a few things. It was me wanting to go figure out if Austin was a place I wanted to live in first. Secondly, me and my brother were living with my mom at the time during COVID, and she had just gotten remarried and wanted to sell the house. So that was also kind of like a good push for us, because, I could have easily stayed in the DMV area and just kind of continue to build out my personal brand there. But I just knew that, like, I felt like there was something calling me here in Austin, and it's less about a job, because I work for myself. It's like, it wasn't like I had a job to come move out here. It was just, I felt like there was a certain energy and a vibration that happens here in this city that kind of draws in special people. And I kind of wanted to be a part of it and put my own twist to it and see if it's true. And I'll be honest, Sam, it's a beautiful, I mean, it's a great city, dude. Like the people above all else is really, I think, what makes it. Because after moving in and living in major cities, Sam, I've realized like, dude, you're in New York, man. It's the freaking Big Apple.
Yeah,
Like it's a city that people from the West want to come and experience, right? And it's no different than why people in New York want to go to LA. And you want to experience what you don't understand, right? And that's kind of human nature.
for
But
sure.
after seeing a lot of these cities, I've realized that Sam, cities are pretty much the same. Like obviously, certain cities are significantly bigger, but in the grand scheme of things, like it has pretty much the same stuff, like the same offerings. Obviously, cuisine and dining is a little bit different. It's nuanced, but relatively speaking, it has the Walmarts, the Costco's, like the things that most of us go to, Trader Joe's, like Apple stores, shopping centers, outlets. Every city will have some form of those things. Some will have a lot more options, some will have very little options. But I'm just a believer that a city that someone lives in, what makes it is the people. And
Yeah.
here, there's something special about the people that come here. And I think that is kind of what made my decision a lot easier, Sam. And obviously, 6 months later, it's easier for me to say that now. It's very difficult for someone that doesn't know anyone to have that same belief because it's just a different perspective. But after even making the jump, Sam, it's been an amazing decision. I wouldn't have traded it for anything.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I love that story. And yeah, I mean, that's why I moved to New York. So well, I'm originally from Long Island, but I lived in Ohio for college and 3 years after. And I just wanted to go to an amazing city with incredible energy. And I get that here. And I'm sure you probably have a very similar feeling there. I mean, it sounds like it definitely. You seem to be enjoying a lot. So really happy for you, man, that you found a place where you really feel at home and that you've been able to connect with the people. I'm also really curious. So like obviously you moved there and your way of making money is your own personal brand. You run your own business. Obviously, you've done really well on some different social media platforms, but and answer this in whatever level you're comfortable answering it. But like, what are some different sources of revenue that you've been able to allow yourself to live a comfortable life in Austin and be able to survive with running your own personal brand?
Yeah, I love this, dude. And I love it because like, I mean, Sam, you watch my content. It's a lot of running content, but like
Yeah,
I'm slowly sprinkling like other entrepreneurship stuff, more business stuff, just because it's something I care about. Like, and it's something that I enjoy to talk about. So I have no issue talking about this.
awesome.
First, I started as a personal trainer. That's kind of how I got my foot into the door of just entrepreneurship, right? Because when you're a self-employed individual, you're still working. You're not working for the man, you're just working for yourself.
Yeah,
But you're still self-employed, right? So it's like I think about, this the four quadrants of the rich dad, poor dad quadrants. I don't know if you ever read that book, but it's a great book for your readers.
I'll have to
The
check it
cash
out.
flow quadrant. And he talks about, being an employee, then being self-employed, then being a business owner, and then being an investor. And most people spend their time on the left side of the quadrant, being an employee working for someone, or myself working for yourself. And to make that pivot to the other side, you do need to create some systems. You need to create some support so that you can operate and create money while you're sleeping. So first, to answer your question, I started as a personal trainer. So a lot of my income was coming through one-on-one exchange of time. And that can get you far, but it can only get you so far because you and I, Sam, unless you have a portal, only have 24 hours in the day. And it's how we utilize that time that makes the difference between most people and what they do. So I quickly realized that, my hour of time in that moment, yes, 40 bucks, 50 bucks, 80 bucks, 100 bucks, 200 bucks an hour, whatever someone charges for their hour of time, at some point you will hit a plateau unless you want to work and not sleep at all. So as I was making that shift, Sam, I was still making content. I because I just consumed so much of Gary Vee's content, like
Love
I
Gary.
understood attention arbitrage. I love Gary, dude. Attention arbitrage is the name of the game. And every industry gets affected by the internet. And the current state of the internet is social media. And if you don't understand how to communicate what your company or your brand, what they do, or who you're trying to sell to, it will be very challenging as a small business to really scale and create more exposure to what you're doing. So every day I started to get into the mindset of document your journey. Don't try to create content. Now there's like these terms, influencers, content creators, all these things. Like for me, I just wanted to share the things that I was doing every day, from the clients I was meeting to the clients I wasn't getting, to the, internships I was doing, the places I was working for free to gain more knowledge. I was just sharing the journey. And as I was doing that, I was building traction very slowly. Like no one was watching my stuff, dude. I think I had like 2,000 followers on Instagram. A lot of it was because people followed me because of college football and things of that sort. But as Gary was really going deep and just talking so heavily about get on TikTok. Right now, it's a dancing platform for these young kids, but very soon, the adults and the decision makers will be on this platform. And as we sit here in 2022, that has panned out. I mean, it's last year, 35 to 50 was the largest demographic that went on TikTok.
Wow.
It's not just 18-year-olds and 14-year-olds dancing anymore. It's legit decision makers that are looking at this stuff and they're figuring out, one, how do I brand my business on this platform? Or two, there's products that are getting sold to me that I'm seeing that now I'm making the buying decisions off TikTok. So that transition. So the first way I started making money was through personal training income. So one-on-one time. The second has been through brand deals. And as you start to make content, as you start to make out or build out your content or your personal brand itself, brands that are in the space that you are in will start wanting to do work with you and collab with you, right? So whether it's shoe companies, whether it's health and wellness brands, whether it's recovery tools like the Whoop, there's a lot of different brands in, industries that affect health and wellness that want to partner with people that are in that space. So brand building and kind of brand partnerships is kind of that second leg. And then the third has kind of been a subscription model. So I have an app that basically holds, a library of exercises and workout programs that is very passive. I upload it. I have to kind of manage the logistics of the actual program. And that kind of operates on its own as like a passive subscription-based model. Then I do a little bit of merch. If I come out with a hat line, shirts, shorts, things of that sort, it hasn't been very, very big, but I'll come out, like I have right now a hat getting launched. So I'll do some special like merch packages in that sense. And then the kind of final leg has been selling more. And this is something I've really been building out now and spending a lot more time, is just building out my personal community to then offer whether it's more access to me or one-on-one coaching from an online perspective, because I'm doing a lot less one-on-one coaching in person, but opening it up because it's a lot more scalable doing it online. So just kind of building that out now has kind of been something big for me. And then, I'm a firm believer, not only just the quadrants, right? When you're self-employed or employed, you need to use your income and invest it. And people underlook that aspect of, how do I create another form of income? Sometimes your investment portfolio is that extra leg. And whether, whatever someone wants to invest into, whether it's real estate, stocks, bonds, crypto, like there's so many different places to put your money. You need to do the homework to obviously figure out what time is, when it's good to put money in, when it's good to pull it out, or even just the basic knowledge of like what a stock is, what an ETF is, what's a mutual fund, all these things that, once again, college doesn't really teach you. You have to go seek this stuff. So as a business owner, it's imperative to understand a lot more than just what you do. Someone sees me as a runner, Sam, that's what they think. But like, you know how it is. I mean, dude, there's so many other facets of the world that you have to understand. But those are the main sources of income. And then I guess the last thing would be social media. Like I get paid per view for TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. It's not a significant chunk of income, but it's something. And that's kind of like the delayed gratification of making content, is that as you post stuff out there, it sits and marinates. And that marination, just like any good food, sometimes is the recipe of something really, really good. So that's kind of different ways I make money.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. And, it's crazy to think how many different areas you're able to pull from, but I mean, they all make sense within your brand. And I mean, obviously in the world today, there's so much opportunity for that. And I'm sure as we ride along the next couple of years, someone like you, you're just going to see more and more opportunity within this space, as I don't think the internet's going anywhere. And
That's a fact. I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any like future business ideas that you have for your own personal brand, or is a lot of that to come?
I mean, nothing that, like, my goal, Sam, is like to continue to build this out. And like some of these things that have happened for me, like, have not been planned.
Yeah.
Like, I never thought that I could actually make as much. I never thought I could make money through brand deals, you know? But then once that started to happen, I was like, oh shoot, like I could really capitalize on this, you know? And then it starts to get, it's kind of like that thought process of like when you're first starting out, you're just throwing pasta on the wall, right? And you're waiting to see what sticks. But then when you see what sticks, then the game changes. Like then you're playing darts, and now you have darts that you can then start to try to aim. And I think that's how I perceive a lot of my content, a lot of my brand is like, I don't have a 5-year plan, straight up, because I don't even know what next week looks like. Something could pop up tomorrow that will get my attention and I will jump on it. Just like this podcast, dude. Like you hit me up like a week ago and I was just like, you know what? I have been wanting to say yes to a lot of things. And I think at times, Sam, creators, influencers, whatever you want to call people that are in this space, like once you get a little bit of a following, people think that they're too big to come on and hop on a pod with the stranger. And I'm just like, I hate when people do that shit. So like, I'm just a firm believer. Like I always, at any point, there's opportunities to one, connect and create. And even in these moments, like, dude, we're creating right now, having this conversation, So I don't have anything that's like set in stone. I think the biggest thing I'm working on right now is building out more of a community that I can give value to. Because for a long time, Sam, I never monetized my community. Like there was not like an ebook or a 5 steps to this that I ever try to sell, because I wanted to make money through brand deals outside of my community. And I wanted to just organically provide value to my audience without asking them for something in return. So now I also have a point where I have leverage too, because now I have a bunch of people asking me like, how do I work with you, Matt? How do I do this? Or how do I get access to this? Or can I get on a call with you? And it's, like I said, we have 24 hours in a day. I can't do all of that stuff, Sam. Like I can't say yes to everything, but I can say yes to things that, one, I get fired about, like this. But then those other things that I can still provide value, but understand that I have to understand my value as well, right? So providing those things for my people, I think, is like the biggest thing I'm working on right now. And I'm sure there's other fitness goals that are going to come across that my plate as well that will kind of come on my radar. But yeah, nothing crazy set in stone.
Yeah, no, and I think that's smart, because I think having a long-term plan could definitely be helpful and could provide a path for certain people. But I think in our space specifically, like the creator path, it's constantly changing. You got to be adaptable to those changes. And if you come in with too structured of a plan, I mean, just like running too, like I personally, like, I follow different running plans when I'm training for different races. I'm sure you have some really great plans as well, but things happen in life. Adjustments need to come into place. Maybe you wake up one day sore, maybe you wake up one day with a little bit of extra energy, and making those adjustments and riding it out and figuring out what's best for you. That's typically the best way to see success and happiness with whatever you're doing.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's nothing cookie cutter. There's nothing that's like a one size fits all approach, right? It's like, dude, some days like the human element is so powerful that like it's just out of our control, quite frankly. There's obviously tactics and practices that you can implement, but the variability from human to human is so fucking drastic that it's hard to say like, Sam, this is going to be perfect for you. And like, Matt, this would be, what I'm saying? It's just, life doesn't work that way. And that's why I think this new age of entrepreneurship is so different. Because to your point, Sam, like people don't have 12-year, 15-year plans anymore.
Yeah.
It's ludicrous to think in that longevity, because in 2 years, in 6 months, the platform where you're generating your revenue could be completely gone. So what happens to that 15-year plan? It's like you almost trash it up and rewrite a new one that lasts for 6 months. And you just try to use that as the game plan. Because, dude, to your point, man, with technology, it never stops. And it doesn't care what humans think. it's going to adapt. And the people that adapt with it will continue to see the success. And, the moment that you think that, oh, I've made it, or I'm good, or I'm content, like that's when the next young entrepreneur, the next young motivated cat is going to come in and kind of swoop on by,
Yeah, absolutely. Such great advice, Matt. I appreciate all of this. I know you got to eat here soon, but any other final thoughts, anything else you wanted to throw out that you think the listeners could get some value from before we let you get back to your day?
Yeah, I mean, there's this quote that Jim Quick says, and he's a mind coach. You know Jim Quick, right, Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he has this quote. It's, the only limits we have are the ones that we believe in. And whether that's someone that's made you have that certain limitation, or you've instilled that limitation in yourself because of past trauma or childhood events or previous relationships or previous jobs or occupations or whatever it might be, something that is making you not live to your full potential, I would say make sure that you are fully aware that you are in control. And as soon as you make that decision that, hey, I want to change, I want to try this new thing, or I want to get out of this toxic relationship, or I want to have a better relationship with my parents or my siblings, or whatever it is, that if you can actually be aware that you are fully in control and that you can change these things, that would be the last thing I want to leave with someone here today, is that you're in control of your life and no one else is going to take responsibility for you. So if you want to achieve something, if you have a passion or a dream or something that you feel like is calling your name, then go after it, chase after it with all your might and all your energy. And I promise you, on the other side, it might take years, it might take months, it might take decades, but on the other side, you will find fulfillment and happiness and joy. And then it becomes so easy to spread that shit to everyone that you're around. And I'm just a firm believer. I love Gary's message of like, just spread more kindness. And I think we need more people that are doing that. And there's so many ways to spread that. And it could be through conversations. It could be through holding a door. It could be through smiling through someone who's cleaning up after you. And like those small things, man, can go such a far way. So that's, I think, what I'll leave with people is the only limits we have are the ones we believe in.
Amazing. And where do we find you, Matt? I know where to find you, but if someone has never seen you, where do they find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much on all social media platforms: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. YouTube, I'm just Matt Choi. On Instagram and TikTok, Matt Choi 6. And yeah, I mean, dude, I'm pretty much. I mean, me and Sam got connected through DMs on Instagram. Like, I try my best to respond to as many people as I can. I don't get to all of them, I'll be quite honest. But a lot of times I'll respond in like a voice memo and just kind of just answer a quick question, or just kind of acknowledge that I'm still here present, acknowledging my DMs. But definitely feel free to reach out if you have a question or comment or anything. But Sam, I really appreciate you having me on as a guest, my friend.
Yeah, this has been an awesome episode, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing your journey again, but speaking to you one-on-one about it has been so much fun for me. So thank you so much for joining. And if you need anything in the future, I'm more than happy to help you. You know, what goes around comes around for sure, man.
Dude, no doubt, man. Best of luck next week in the marathon. And I'll be looking forward to, I'll keep you posted about New York, and best of luck when you come back to Austin, dude. I'll definitely be cheering you on.
Yeah, I'll hit you up when I come down to Austin. And yeah, if you need a place to crash in New York, hit me up. I got you. And
I love it,
stay
dude.
around the city.
Hell yeah, man.
Cool, man. Take care now.
See ya.